Hello everyone, it is Joe here from Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Champions Path, make sure you go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using the code Omnipoke. For today's video, we are going to be looking at the very promising one prize archetype, Charizard, and as you all know, it's based around that Leon supporter from the new set, Vivid Voltage. Let's get into the basic concept. And Charizard's really an all-singing, all-dancing card. It's a one-prize attacker with really decent damage output. He can reach 300 or 330 if you have used a Leon in that turn and you have all four in the discard pile. And he even draws you cards. Like, this guy is everything you want. As soon as you get a Charizard into play, you start feeling great because the deck has kick-started, you're getting your main attacker online, and everything else sort of falls into place when you start getting these Charizards into play. I really do feel as the game progresses, this deck becomes much easier to play and much easier to perform with because you're naturally deck thinning with each Charizard ability that goes by. Your Leon's already sat there in the discard pile, the hard work's done for you, and you're just able to simply set up your next Charizard and announce an attack, and it's, you know, in that 200 range most of the time, minimum, and that's just a really scary thing to be. It really reminds me of like a front-loaded Baby Blacephalon, if you will. I think Baby Blounds, typically its lost condition comes in the form of like late game Marnies and reset stamps, sometimes early game in that respect because they just miss attacks, whereas this deck is like you're doing all the hard work in the first one or two turns, and then like that's it. You've done your rare candying, you've found your Pokemon, your Leons are hit the discard pile, then your opponent literally can't interact with you because you've got an insane draw engine online, and all you need is like a 2 energy attack each turn, and that's like not difficult to do. Obviously, we're a Welder based deck, so yeah, I really like the mentality behind this deck and how good it feels as an archetype if you're up against low pressure decks. Things like ADP are quite low pressure. They don't really attack you until turn 3. That gives you a lot of time to build up your strategy, so sometimes that can be really good. Let's get into the list now. We'll start off with the Pokemon. This is going to be quite a straightforward list of Charizard. I think there's been a few different pairings that I've certainly considered and need to put more time into, but the one that I'm sticking with is basically tried and trusted. Stellar Wish, helping you get towards early ball search cards. We play tons in here, and we also, of course, want to find our rare candies. Stellar Wish is still one of the most efficient cards at making that happen for you. I feel like because it's proactive, it's much better than using things like Snorlax or Talonflame. So yeah, Stellar Wish still going to be the go-to option for us. Obviously, it's a great way to protect our Charmanders on the bench as well. Then we have this 4-2-4 line of Charizard. I've gone very thick on this line. It'll make sense when you see the supporters in a moment, because you really just want to maximize your Charizards. Battle Sense is an insane ability. Once during a turn, you would look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put one of them into your hand, then discard the other card. So you're cherry picking whilst also adding in some discard synergy in the deck. We really need discard synergy because we want to pitch those Leons as quickly as possible. That's why you're seeing the 2 count of Oranguru. Primate Wisdom is a super big deal here because whenever you've drawn into a Leon, you can either discard it through Battle Sense because you can Primate Wisdom it to the top of the deck and then Battle Sense it straight into the discard pile with the combination of Guru Charizard, or you can try and find another discard synergy card like Quick Ball, for example. So yeah, those are the 2 real options that we have with Charizard. Quick note on the new Charmander, it has a nice draw 1 option if you really need to, but typically you try and pay retreat into a Stellar Wish if you can and protect the guy, but something to bear in mind. Royal Blaze does a base of 100 damage for 2 fires, and you can do 50 more for each Leon in your discard pile. So obviously you can pay a maximum of 4 Leon in your deck, which is a maximum of an extra 200 damage. So yeah, up to 300, very solid. If you're using a Leon that turn, like I say, 330, not too shabby at all. I've thought about adding in Zigzagoon in here to push yourself to 340, so you can deal with Eternatus, but honestly, I think you should be content with 2-shotting Eternatus for most of the time. Just the way the price trade is going to work, it's unlikely that you're in a situation where you've already got 4 Leons in the discard pile, and you're able to find Zigzagoon as well. It's basically just saying, like, you'll draw the absolute stones and it'll work out every now and then, whereas really, as always, it's a stage 2 deck, so I'm petrified of trying to play it, so I'm trying to maximize the copies of the deck working like a solid 7 out of 10, you know what I mean, rather than trying to aim for the hedges and get some home run games, whereas sometimes it also just sort of crumbles on itself. But yeah, that Royal Blaze in general, very, very good damage output to sit on. And like I said, once those Leons are in the discard pile, they're just chilling. They're there for damage for the rest of the game, and that's never really a problem for you, which is awesome. We are playing one 2-prize Pokemon in Dedenne GX. I still just feel like having Dedenne Change as an option with so much Ball Search that we are playing in the deck is something that I really don't want to pass up. I think it's just a safe route to have. You're always looking to find multiple Charmanders on the opening turns. You're looking to get multiple Stellar Wishes off if possible. You're looking to try and set up that Charizard as well. So we have some decent dig with the Dedenne, with Welder, with Battle Sense, with Clay as well, the other main supporter that we're playing in this deck. So yeah, that's really another way that you can have discard synergy, really. So yeah, that's really nice. Onto the trainers then. Like I said, we are a clay-based draw engine for the supporters. So that's why you're seeing a very thick lineup of item cards, because that's what clay is going to help pick out of our deck to be as effective as possible. So we are playing one copy of Palpad. It can recover supporter cards that we are hitting into the discard pile. Sometimes you do want to put Leons back into the deck just to then re-access them to use for additional damage mod. But for the most part, Palpad's getting back Boss's Orders or Welders. 2 copies of Ordinary Rod, because of course your stuff is going to be getting knocked out and you want to recover them. And at the same time, you can be battle sensing these away, you can be claying these into the discard pile, so Ordinary Rod as a 2 count makes me feel a lot more safe. 2 copies of Fire Crystal. Again, I'm not playing any Giant Hearth in this deck, no Stadium at all actually. Just the Fire Crystals, so that when Clay is discarding those fires, you then have instant access to them, and of course they'll naturally hit the discard pile as Charizards get knocked out, so it's an easy way to secure your next Welder use, which is cool. I'm just playing 3 copies of Scoop Up Net. It feels like your late game, you sort of tap out of Jirachi and move straight into Charizard turn by turn in the sort of mid to late game. So the Scoop Up Net's here really just to move between your early game Jirachis and Orangurus, because it's just so easy and so low maintenance in that late game that you can get away with the lower count and not having to spam Stellar Wish turn by turn by turn when you do reach that late game. We're playing 1 Incense, 2 Com, 3 Great, 4 Quick Ball. Yes, tons of Ball Search cards. I am super duper paranoid of not hitting our Candy Stage 2. You want to play a bunch of item cards because you can get them straight out the deck from Clay. And you also want to play these cards proactively. You want to play the Great Balls proactively, play Incense proactively, play Quick Ball proactively, because then Clay is hitting more item outs. So that's all good news for you. I'm playing quite specific splits. I'm always sketchy on playing Evo Incense. I usually go for Great Balls and Comms first. That's a rule that I'm still sticking to, but I do feel like 1 Incense outweighs the strength of a 4th Great Ball or a 3rd Com. You can make your own choice, though. I kind of just wanted to showcase that we're playing like a ton of Ball Search in general, and you can modify this to take your pick on what you think is most important. But Evo Incense basically is like a guaranteed 5th Charizard that you can find with Stellar Wish and Clay, so I feel like it's better than just Great Ball and stuff that can whiff. So just a small thing there for stats. I'm sure you can do number crunching if you want to around this to find the most optimal answer, but I'm leaning most towards the Quick Ball and the Great Balls because of course they are your army of Charmanders, which is the first step on turn 1 to try and get those rolling. And of course we're playing 4 rare candies because you want to get into as many Charizards as possible throughout the game. For supporters, I'm playing just 1 copy of Boss's Orders. It's pretty greedy, but again, I'm paranoid that Stage 2 decks don't work in the first place, and we're already playing Palpad in here, so it feels like you've got to be in a very, very favourable situation to find yourself using Boss's Orders. So you won't be using it too much, but it's something you can weave in to finish something off or to get an easy 2-prize knockout here and there. I'm not too paranoid of having this prize or whatever. You can get by just by being a majority 1-prize deck and continuing to hit through whatever's thrown at you. It will come in handy, of course, but I don't want to commit too many spaces to this card because, again, it's not helping you with the core strategy, and you can try and cycle it with Palpad anyways. 3 copies of Welder. You don't need to weave this in too often. There'll be a few turns in the game where you'll try and make this happen. If you miss turn 1 attachment, for example, and when you are using the Welder, you're hoping that you're doing it alongside things like Fire Crystals, so you can Welder 2, attach 1 to the bench, so the following turn you have the freedom to use a Boss, a Leon, or a Clay if you really want to. So yeah, we're not a pure Welder deck. You don't have to be doing it turn by turn, but it still is handy for sure. Clay is my sort of go-to early game supporter. I really like the aggressive dig that he provides. Gets us into a ton of Ball Search cards, gets us really, really good access to rare candies. And of course, there's the additional payoff of if there's ever a Leon in that top 7, it goes straight to that discard pile for you. So all very good stuff there. You can even, again, use Clay in combination with Oranguru to guarantee any Leons that you've drawn into the discard pile. Typically, you won't do that because you will want to battle sense those Leons that are in your hand away, like after the Clay. So something to bear in mind. But Clay does have that small additional synergy card. Opportunities, I guess you should say. And Leon itself, he's a playable card. That's always a way that you can get one out of your hand and into the discard pile for an additional 30 damage. It can be really handy when it's, for example, the third Leon in the game. It can push you to 280. So that's obviously a good breakpoint of damage, something to bear in mind when you are up against some tag team based decks. And if you do go into some of the lower hit point VMAXs that have 320 hit points, the fourth Leon being played can be a big one-hit KO, which is very cool. Onto the energy, I am playing 9 physical copies. I think it's a good number in combination with the double Ordinary Rod and the double Fire Crystal, that you will have decent opportunity to see them in the early turns, to just swing them down onto Charmanders when you get the chance. Enough access to them when you are needing those Welder options. I really like getting these in the discard pile with Battle Sense and with Clay once again, because I'm pretty confident that those Fire Crystals will see us through alongside the sort of late game Ornery Rod options that we need to have. So yeah, I'm currently playing the 9. You can play Stadiums if you want to, but it's not something that I've gone for right now just because it has anti-synergy with Clay. And I like the physical high count compared to Spinners, for example, which would be accessible via the Clay, but we have the crystals anyway, kind of fulfilling that role. So here's the full list now. Pause as well if you want to check it out in the description. But there's a ton of tech options. Like I said, it doesn't really stop at Stellar Wish Jirachi. There's a ton of different things that I've considered, and I'm still sort of wrestling with, to be honest. My initial build of this was going to be playing Magneton, and it was going to play Lieutenant Surge and Misty's Favor. The idea being you could Surge Misty's and get all your Leons straight into your hand. You can just Dedenne change that away straight afterwards. Or you could go Surge Misty's and then research, something like that. It just seemed like a few too many moving parts. That said, I can foresee Magneton still being worth testing. At the same time, I've seen Cincino as well as a partner. Obvious extra discard synergy with Make Do for your Leons and a few additional cards here and there. A bit less random than Clay, perhaps, so that can be a good selling point. Inteleon could be another alternative for, again, just picking things out of your deck whilst you're trying to evolve up. Maybe leans you more towards having things like Evo Incense into the list naturally to give yourself pretty high chances of getting that Charizard on turn 2. If you're not so happy with Stellar Wish, you can look towards things like Talonflame V for early fast flight attacks to discard some early game Leons and just be a nice free retreat pivot throughout the game. Or if you want to try out Snorlax instead of Jirachi, obviously you have a bit more hit points, so you're not just getting like chipped through by random attacks in the early turns, which is sometimes a nice benefit, but it is less proactive draw than Stellar Wish would be, which is the main reason why I'm not going for it. Rotom Foam can be similar to the Oranguru combo, where you can try and find Leons in the top, and you can then Battle Sense them straight away. Additionally, you could use it for cards that you want to fodder off to Battle Sense in the discard pile, so that's pretty decent. Mewtwo could be a way to Mind Report to recover things like the 1 copy of Boss that we're using, and that's pretty appealing. I would only play the Mewtwo if I went up to a 4th Scoop Up Net copy, though, because otherwise I don't think you're getting enough use out of it. Rosa and Oricorio are some nice defensive cards that you only really get to use once Charizards have gone down, but that's basically when you're the most vulnerable, to be honest. Because you've just lost your attacker, you need to rebuild one, but at the same time you don't have your draw engine, the Charizard itself, to get yourself back in the game. So when you're relying on just drawing 3 from Welder and hoping for the best, it can sometimes be a bit of a yikes. But do bear in mind, when a Charizard has gone down, more often than not, you need to Welder again to have a 2-energy attacking Charizard ready to rumble. That's the main reason why I'm not playing the Rosa. It sometimes feels a little bit too slow for me. Oricorio certainly is reasonable. Right now I'm only playing 1 Dedenne. But if you're happy playing 2 GX Pokemon in the deck, you can be slightly worse against ADP. Because obviously they can like more wild stuff into play as well, so that's always something to be slightly concerned about. But Oricorio certainly is a reasonable one, and one that I'm sure you can make the argument to make space for. Onto the overall matchup overview. I said at the start that ADP sometimes does buy you time, but at the same merit, they can sometimes just hit that GX attack on 2, and if you're not ready to deal with ADP then and there, it can be a real struggle for you. Inteleon Frostmoth can be quite scary, especially with their spreading options that they have available to them, and even just the fact that they can now loop some one-prize water Pokemon. For example, if they're playing Nessa, they can have Nessa, Eldegoss, and like one of Suicune in their deck, and sometimes they just hit the gates earlier than you, and they're, you know, trying to trade quite quickly, and they can take those easy other one prizes with the help of Zigzagoon, Scoop Up Net, and the 60 damage pings from Inteleons. That certainly can be scary. From there, though, it's really just other one-prize decks that are my big concerns. A lot of the VMAX decks I can foresee having a decent time against. There's not too much sniping in the format right now, unless there are some big spread decks coming out. Even if there are big spread decks, a lot of them are going to be Orbital-based, which I'm sure you can cash in on some easy prizes on, which is pretty decent. So yeah, it's just the other decks that are going to be faster than you most of the time. Like, it feels like against the Baby Blowns, the Mad Parties, the Excadrills, the Tool Drop decks, that sort of stuff, the new Donphan and Cramorant decks as well, I do feel like you're going to be the one having to high roll more often. So over the course of many games of testing against the other one prize archetypes, I'm sure you will probably come out negatively, even though you do have a decent amount of hit points to boast and your late game is super strong. I feel like having to make physically 6 Charizards in any game is a lot of work. So that's always something that you have to be slightly concerned about. So yeah, the one prize decks will give you the most trouble, I would imagine, going into the new format if there aren't new spreading decks. If there are new spreading decks, you can obviously try and put Mew in there as well if you want to try and cover that base. And finally, on the closing thoughts, it's really that I've really just hit the tip of the iceberg with Charizard. I've gone for something tried and trusted. We know that Stellar Wish is decent. We know that Oranguru is going to have great synergy with Battle Sense. And the Clay list, I mean, we've seen Clay in other renditions. It's only really worked with like ADP for the most part right now. But there's enough item cards in this archetype that I feel you can certainly go down that route. But if you do want to go down more traditional supporter lines by just having researches, that's fine too. If you want to have some more stage 1 ability-based Pokemon, again, that's something that you can certainly work towards. I'm certain we'll see a lot of different renditions of Charizard as the format kicks off, but I think there's so much there that we'll definitely see a lot of experimentation with the deck, and it's certainly one that I think is going to be a lot of fun to play with because first of all, it's a Charizard, and second of all, it has its own ability. There's a lot to like here, to be honest. There's a lot of throwback to other cards as well. I used to love playing Infernape Level X back from the Diamond and Pearl era, and it's exactly the same ability. So yeah, I'm going to have fun playing this no matter what. The only thing in the sort of back of my mind is the real niggle that you are still a stage 2 deck. You still need to hit your candies, more so than ever really, because the candy is your engine at the same time. So if you're whiffing on those pieces early, man, it's going to feel really bad. If a early Charmander gets picked off or whatever, it is going to be a horrific feeling. But as you progress into that late game, you're going to feel more and more confident about your chances to win because you've naturally thinned a lot of the excess cards from your deck, and you've pretty much left yourself with just the cards required to win the game. So stamping, Marnieing, none of that will matter. You'll just be able to keep announcing attacks with your Charizards basically to see you through the game, and that's got to be a good feeling. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you did enjoy the Vivid Voltage deck of Charizard. It's certainly one that I'll be playing as well in the background here and there because I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I still have more to explore with Charizard. What have you been partnering with this guy, or have you been playing a straight build as well? I will love to hear it all down below. Let me know what you guys thought about this list. Let me know what other decks you want to see from Vivid Voltage. I'm keeping an eye on all the comments, trying to get back to you as much as possible. Really do appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.